everyone, Linda Israel here, and this is a video that's part of the virtual junk journal retreat put on by Jess Penny. This video may become available later on for the public. For right now, it is part of the virtual retreat. So my task today is to share with you some ideas and tips and techniques that you can use on your junk mail in your journal. So what I've got here is just, I think this was a cover for a magazine or something. It was given to me by a friend. It's what I call cardstock weight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this. But the first thing I want to do is I want to cut it in order to be a size that I would use in a journal. And typically, I try to make my journal pages at least 8.5 by 11, maybe a little bit smaller. So I'm just going to trim this down to fit. So that'll be 8.5 wide by 11 tall. Just for ease of making a journal page, you can make it whatever size fits your journal you're working on. And actually, this is shorter than 11 inches. So it'll have a cool look to it because it's a little bit shorter. The first thing that I'm going to do to decorate this is I'm going to adhere some old book pages to the journal. So I've ripped out some pages out of an old Reader's Digest, and I'm just going to kind of collage over this because I want a different look that might appear through the paint that I plan to put on here. Okay, so what I've done is I went ahead and cut off the white area, if you will, that was around the text, and I cut them into smaller pieces. And then I've got my little glue pot here. Basically, it's just some Aleene's tacky glue, a white glue with a sponge underneath and a little bit of water. I just find that it's a little bit easier to do the gluing like this. You can use other products if you like. This is just my favorite. Some of the other products I don't like because they remain sticky. I've got a non-stick sheet under my work surface, so you just want to work on a surface that you don't have to worry about items sticking. And what I'm going to do is just kind of put these down going in different directions until I cover the whole thing. So I'm going to put a little bit of the glue and water mixture on here and paste down a piece of paper, and then just keep going until the whole thing is covered. And I'm just going to do it in different directions. I'm not going to worry about if it overlaps or not. I'm just trimming off the excess that might be sticking past my page. So these that are hanging off the edge, I'm going to trim them even on the top and the bottom, but the ones that are hanging off the edge on this side, I'm going to fold over. So I'm just going to glue these into place. And I'm just going to continue filling this side up as well. When I'm done, I'll put my paintbrush that's got glue on it into some water and let it set for a little bit. And then when I can, I'll go to the sink and rinse it out. I'm going to go ahead and trim off the excess on this side. And then I'm going to let this dry for a little bit before I move on to the next item of decorating this newly made page. Now you can leave it just like it is, and you could use that in your journal, but I'm going to take it another step. Okay, so this is pretty much dry. It may be a little tacky, but for the most part, for what I'm going to do, it's dry enough. I've got my Ranger Archival ink here in jet black, and I've got the postmark collage Beeline Designs. This is in my shop, and then just acrylic block. This is a cling mount stamp, and I am going to stamp this on here randomly just to give it some more texture. I'm not going to really worry about how I'm stamping it. I'm just wanting a little bit of design on here. Some of this will be seen, some of it won't. So it may seem silly because we're going to cover this with paint in a moment, but I just like the texture that it gives by stamping over the top of book pages. So that kind of gives it some neat texture. Next, I have a little food tray and an old gift card, and I'm going to get some acrylic paint out. So I've got a little bit of a pale pink and some ivory and a darker pink, because I think I'm almost out of this pale pink. So we're going to mix some paint colors here. You don't want to do too many colors, because if you do, they kind of turn into mud if you mix them together. But if you keep you know, complementary, or not same color family, maybe just a different coloration of hue. And then I'm just putting a little bit on my card. And here's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to scrape this all over, just adding a little bit of texture and color. The thinner you go, the better. So I like to scrape my card and really get off any excess paint. It dries a lot faster, and it also just gives us kind of a neat transparent look to it. Okay, so then I'll give it a moment to dry, and then I'll flip it over and do the other side. I can use my heat tool at this time if I want to hurry the process. Alright, so that's pretty much dry, so I'm just going to flip it over and do the other side. This is a great project if you want to get a bunch of kids involved. Just give them some junk mail and a little bit of paint, and they can cover it. You don't have to do the book page pasting. You may just need a little bit more paint. But it's a fun technique. It's a little messy, but I think it's a great way to use up some of that junk mail, old book pages, to make journaling pages. Alright, so I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to clean my paint palette, and then I'll be right back. Alright, so this is dry. The next thing I'm going to do is, I know that I want to make this a page in a journal. So I'm going to go ahead and fold it in half and crease it so I know where the center of my page is. It comes in handy for the next portions that I'm going to do. So I know that's the center. And what I'm going to do now is take some ivory colored paint, just cheap acrylic craft paint. And I'm going to put it in my palette again, just a little bit. And I've got my card. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a space for writing. So I know this is my center, so I'm going to start kind of up here and just make a block of white or ivory that I want to use for writing space. And all that's doing is just making it so that when you write on top of it, you'll be able to see the writing. Now, if you're a person that doesn't really care if you can actually read the writing, you could have just left it. But you can kind of see that's how that page side would look like. And I'm going to do it again over here on this side. I'm just going in different directions, smoothing it out, trying to get rid of the excess paint so there's not a bunch of blobs on here. And I find that writing on the acrylic paint is quite easy. I don't have any issues with it. I've done it in several other journals. I've got Junk Journal July 2017. Every day in July of 2017 I made a journal, and then I made a journal to show all the journals I made, and it was all painted pages. Alright, so I'm going to dry this, flip it over, and do the other side. Flip it over, and I'm going to do this side. Now, if you wanted perfect boxes, you could make sure that your first layer is well dry, like a couple of days dry, and then put down some painter's tape across here and make a block, and then you could paint inside the block, then remove the paint, and you'll have a perfect block. So that's a way to do that. So the next thing that I want to do is, I've got a stencil here, and I want to add a little design on here. This is a Bella Rose stencil from my subscription box. And I'm going to lay it in the corner down here. And I'm going to pick up some pink paint and put it in my palette. So it's over here in my palette. And then I have one of the Tim Holtz foam that you use for distressing. But I found that if you kind of pat it into the paint, so I'm just making a circular motion and loading it up with paint. And then I'm going to pounce it onto my page. And that's going to give me my stenciled rose. What do you think? I'm going to do that on all the sides, or both sides, or all 4 pages, if you will. What do you think? All right, and I'll dry this and flip it over. And there's that one. I'll go ahead, if you're one of those that wants everything washed, you'll want to do it now. So I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to wash out my stencil, and I'm going to wash out my little foam dauber so I can use it again with a different color later on. So see, I washed out the foam dauber, and so I can use this again later on. I've washed out my stencil, so it's clean. And while I was washing it out, I thought, you know what? I want to do something else on this page. So I'm just going to lay the stencil down. And then I've got my Tattered Angels Glimmer Mist. This is one of the colors that comes in the add-on kit for the Bella Rose. And I'm just going to spray it through that stencil just a little bit to give a little texture onto the acrylic paint. So you just get a little bit of an antique-y rose pattern. I'm going to dry this, flip it over, and do the other side. It's very subtle, but it has a nice shimmer to it. This is mopping it up, so it kind of gets that tea dye, coffee dye look to it. Isn't that kind of cool? So this can be used as a journal page. Okay, now I want to add some lines. You can leave it just like this, but I'm going to take it another step. And I've got the straight stitch out of the 4 stamp set called Shabby Stitches. You could use a ruler and draw lines. I'm going to use a rubber stamp, and I'm just going to basically go across here, and I'm not going to worry about that it went too far, how much space there are in between each one, because I don't write perfectly, do you? So now I have linings over here, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other 3 spots. And that was just using the archival ink. Alright, so I've got a couple of little butterflies that I fussy cut from the digital download Bella Rose Garden. And I'm just going to add some Distress ink to the edges to cover any of that white edge of the paper. I've got some fuzzy yarn that comes in the Bella Rose subscription box. I'm just going to cut a couple little pieces. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of circle it around a little bit. And you can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm going to take my tacky glue, and I'm going to coat the back side of this butterfly, and I'm going to stick it down in the center here. See how cute that is? Alright, then I'm going to take a little bit of some Tulip Dimensional Glitter Paint, and I'm going to put just a little bit, like a little dot. You see that? Just a little dot? And then I'm going to take my finger and just kind of smear it around. And what that's going to do is give this butterfly a little bit of sparkle. And then I'm going to take my heat tool and just kind of touch it really quick to dry it. So I'm moving my heat tool really fast over it because I don't want it to stay in one place, because I don't want the paint to bubble. See, just a little sparkle there. Alright, so I'm going to flip this over and do the same thing right here. We took junk mail that looked like this, and we turned it into a journal page that could be added to your journal. Look at that transformation. These look so completely different. And can you see where you could use things that you already have? Maybe you have different stencils and stamps, acrylic paint. You don't have to use the same digital download, but you could. You could use those fibers. You could add sequins and buttons and lace and trim. But this is just one step of many that you can do to make your own pages. Well, I hope you enjoyed this as part of the virtual junk journal retreat that is put on by Just Penny. If you like this video, please give this a thumbs up, and then share, comment down below your thoughts. And of course, share your experience in the virtual junk journal retreat online. Comment, online on Facebook, on Instagram, Twitter, wherever. Take photos of what you create and tag us. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate it. Have a fabulous day. Bye.